Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Listography. Before we get into today's countdown, I just wanted to let you know about a few videos that I have in the pipeline. Definitely going to be getting to Kiss, Deep Purple, and Elton John soon. And I'm hoping that soon after that, I'll be getting to REM and Sonic Youth. So just make sure that if you're interested in those, that you subscribe and you hit the bell so that you're notified when those videos post. Now for today's episode, we're going to be talking about John Vanderslice, maybe a slightly lesser known artist than some of the others I've covered on here, but one of my favorite artists of all time and someone who I really wanted to talk about on the channel. John Vanderslice owns Tiny Telephone Studios, which has locations in San Francisco as well as Oakland. He enforces analog recording and he provides free tape to all of his clients. He's a record producer as well. He's worked with tons of artists like Beulah, Spoon, the Mountain Goats, and really just about any sort of indie artist from the Bay Area. There's a pretty good likelihood that they've passed through his studios. And aside from that, he also makes his own records, which are incredible, and a heavily orchestrated art pop. He writes really interesting lyrics. He has 11 studio albums. So let's get into it. At number 11, my least favorite John Vanderslice record would be his debut solo album called Mass Suicide Occult Figurines. This was his debut record, like I said. It got some media attention around the time of its release because he had a somewhat controversially titled song on the record called Bill Gates Must Die. This record has the most straightforward rock arrangements of any of his albums. It's actually a pretty good album with good songs and plenty of charm, but it lands in last place because he would become such a better record maker as time went on, and he would develop a sound that was completely his own on his later records, while this one is maybe a bit more derivative. My favorite songs on this record would be Confusion Boats, Bill Gates Must Die, and Big Band Stars. At number 10, I have the record White Wilderness. The idea of this record on paper sounds amazing. Recording a full album with in-house orchestra known as the Magic Orchestra. While the record does sound good, and Minna Choi came up with some great orchestral arrangements for the record, unfortunately the songs just aren't that captivating to me. I like Alamany Gap and English Vines a lot, but the album's best highlight is the simple acoustic and vocal performance of After It Ends, which just kind of highlights the point that when the songs are good, you don't really need the orchestra behind you. And when the songs are weak, not even the beautiful arrangements can really save them. One spot up from there, I have his newest record called The Cedars, which just came out in April. Now, John Vanderslice's albums are the type that normally take a while to worm their way into your brain to the point where you can fully appreciate them. I made sure to listen to this album a few times to make sure that I was giving it a fair shake before placing it on this list. But right now, I still feel like this is one of his weaker efforts. Granted, it's still early and that could change. There are a lot of really cool things happening on this record from a production standpoint, and it really sounds fantastic. There are a lot of great sounding synths on this record and dark, interesting soundscapes. Even lyrically, it's very interesting, but the melodies just aren't that memorable, and the songs haven't really stuck with me yet. It seems to be more influenced by hip-hop and rhythm and beats as opposed to his more melodic sensibilities. Of course, that's where repeated listening could help. My favorite tracks so far are I'll Wait For You and Spectral Dawn. At number 8, I have the record that came out before The Cedars, Dagger Beach. This record has similar issues to The Cedars in that the production can tend to overpower the songs sometimes. I give this record the edge, though, for a few tracks that really do rank among his all-time best. Harlequin Press and Song for Dana Locke, another song that shows his strength as a songwriter without much adornment. It's kind of interesting to note that because so much of what I love about John Vanderslice has to do with how his records sound and his amazing unconventional arrangements. He's clearly a guy with a lot of studio prowess and know-how, and yet still some of his best songs are very, very simple. It also serves as a reminder to not overlook him as a songwriter. To me, he's one of the most interesting lyricists and melody writers of the 21st century so far. At number 7, I have Vanderslice Plays Diamond Dogs. As the title says, this is a track-for-track cover of David Bowie's entire Diamond Dogs album, and this is how you do a covers record. Clearly, John has a great love for this record and treats it with a great amount of reverence, but he's not beholden to it at all, drastically altering some of the songs. At times, it's even easy to forget that these are Bowie songs because he completely turns them into his own thing. The title track is one of my all-time favorite covers. At number 6, I have his album from 2001 titled Time Travel is Lonely. This was his second album, and while it's still a little rough around the edges, it's a huge step forward from Mass Suicide Occult Figurines. Musically, it does away with the rock arrangements in favor of a more insulated bedroom pop sound, with lots of orchestral flourishes. Lyrically, this album is very interesting as well. It's apparently a concept record about a fictional brother of his that goes crazy living in Antarctica. There's also a whole time travel aspect to the story as well. It's a very different type of songwriting than someone like a Ron Sexsmith, who I did a recent episode about, but it's a type of writing that I really like a lot. At number 5, I have his album Romanian Names from 2009. From the very first notes of this record, with the stacked harmonies on Tremble and Tear, it just digs its hooks into me. It's followed by Fetal Horses, one of my favorite John Vanderslice songs. Too Much Time, Romanian Names, and Hard Times are 3 of his most beautiful songs. This record delivered more of the same blend of jangly, indie, orchestral chamber pop, and studio manipulated weirdness that he'd been reliably serving up for close to a decade at this point. Considering that, it's understandable that he decided to shake things up a little for his next record, White Wilderness, though it may be a little predictable within the context of his discography compared to the rest of the music world. No one was really making records like this, and it sounds as refreshing to me today as it did then. At number 4, I have Life and Death of an American 4-tracker. On his third album, he was finally able to take the flashes of brilliance that he'd shown on previous records and stretch it across the length of an entire LP. Another concept album with an insulated and lonely protagonist. This record feels much more autobiographical than Time Travel is Lonely. The thing that really sets this album apart from his first 2 records, though, are the melodies. They're far from top 40 pop hooks, but as weird and arty as his records can be, they also have great songs at their cores. This record is really where he finds the perfect balance between accessible pop and insular weirdness and sonic experimentation. At number 3, I have the album Emerald City. Arrangement-wise, this record is a little more straightforward than most of its predecessors. There's a lot of acoustic guitar and piano, but most of the guitars are very distorted or treated in such a way that it never comes across as run-of-the-mill singer-songwriter. Lyrically, this record is very dense and difficult to figure out. There's a lot of allusions to 9/11. Beyond that, I can't really say exactly what's going on in these songs, but that's not to say that the lyrics aren't great. They're extremely interesting and detailed. They're fun to analyze and try to figure out, like piecing together a puzzle. I love the songs Time to Go, The Parade, White Dove, and The Minaret. At number 2, I have Cellar Door. There are 2 John Vanderslice records that I think are just about as perfect as records can be. The first of those, and the one coming in at number 2, like I said, is Cellar Door. It's a continuation of everything that he'd been doing on previous albums. Chamber pop with elaborate and ornate arrangements, augmented with strange electronic noises, gurgling synths, and distorted acoustic guitars. The lyrics are extraordinarily detailed while still keeping an air of mystery to them. There are so many good songs on this record. Up Above the Sea might be my favorite John Vanderslice song. They Won't Let Me Run is great. I also love Family Tree, White Plains, and Promising Actress. At number 1, I have the album Pixel Revolt. I knew some people with similar musical taste to me who like John Vanderslice a lot, so when I saw this record used, I picked it up. I was instantly blown away by this album and subsequently the rest of his catalog. This is one of my favorite records ever, easily a top 10 record from the previous decade. In a lot of ways, it was very familiar, echoing bands that I already loved like Spoon and Death Cab, but in a lot of other ways, it was so unlike anything else I had ever heard. If you don't know Vanderslice's music, I really can't recommend this record enough. If you're into early 2000s indie or chamber pop or really interesting concept albums with great lyrics, anything like that, I think you'll really enjoy these records. Again, so many great songs on this one. Plymouth Rock, Exodus Damage, Peacocks in the Video Rain, Trance Manual, Continuation, Dear Sarah Shoe, and Angela, just to name a few. As always, comment below, let me know what you think of John Vanderslice and which records of his are your favorites. And maybe let me know what artists you'd like to see me cover on the channel in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you next time.